So thank you to Mauro Gallavotti, CEO of Celli Group, Andrea Illy, that we saw before. I was not mistaken. Andrea Illy is speaking as the president of the Regenerative Society Foundation, other than president of illycaffè. So I can see both of them now. They can't hear me? Can you hear me, President? Can you hear me? I think there is a connection problem with Mr. Illy. Yeah, with you as well? Yes, we can hear you now. Perfect. Now you can hear me. So I'm going to go with the first question, because the Celli Group, from this point of view, represents, in my opinion, the demonstration that I would like you to talk about, that the topic of sustainability is not in antithesis, as we hear sometimes, with the development theme, with the development topic. We saw this in the first part, and we'll see it afterwards. It can become, indeed, a development factor. Mainly, there is the idea that to be sustainable means having costs, or accessory costs. And so it is difficult sometimes to rhyme profit and the objective of an increase in income with the topic of sustainability. Why is it not so on the basis of your experience? Well, first of all, thank you. And I would like to really greet everyone and thank San Patrignano for this opportunity. The Celli Group is a small Italian excellency. It's something that has been active globally, though, not only in Italy. We are the third global operator in manufacturing professional plants for delivering drinks. We come from an area very close to San Patrignano, and 80% of the business is now in 120 countries in the world, 6 plants, 3 in the UK, many continents, and we are between the great suppliers of large companies and multinationals in beverage, and also small and local companies. Between the large multinationals, there are Coca-Cola, Pepsi, Heineken, Carlsberg, etc. So we do plants for delivering drinks, and we are also on the plans for innovation. We are using IoT techniques, and we have based our business, like has been said many times in the morning, on data. Our plants are all connected, more and more so, and they gather data for the consumer experience and also for the optimization and maintaining and maintenance, and technical assistance. So 95% of consumption of beverages in the world happens through single-use pack, which is a bottle or a can. And obviously, this mode of consumption is no longer sustainable, even in view of the demographic increase. So we've talked a lot about plastic, dispersion of plastic in the environment, etc. But the reality is that consumption of single-use pack is no longer sustainable from a carbon footprint point of view, but also from a water footprint point of view. If we think that to manufacture a PET bottle for 1.5 liters, 1/3 of the water that is contained is actually dispersed only to produce and transport the bottle itself, the container itself. So going back to the unbalanced model of consumption generally, in terms of humanity, but in Italy, this also happens in a particular way. Italy is the second country in Europe for hydric consumption of water, and the first country for the consumption of mineral water in the world. What the large public doesn't know is that Italy is the first country in the world for advertising investment in mineral water over the past 50 years. So we are really throwing away a lot of water per capita. We don't use it to hydrate ourselves, network water, I mean. We don't use this to hydrate ourselves. We use bottled water to hydrate ourselves. And it's complete folly to go and get the water to the source and transport it with, when water is actually available everywhere. Obviously, this is not a crusade. We are just talking about rebalancing consumption with great benefits in economic, social, and environmental terms, because we've done a lot of research on this matter. So to rebalance this model of consumption, obviously, we need to go through a valorization of network water, but also rethinking the experience of consumption. Now, what is very fashionable at the moment is a bottle like this to be refilled. Now, the problem is that where do we refill? If we do this from a simple tap, we have a very poor experience. Nowadays, we can have some machines that could guarantee a much better consumption experience. For example, they give you fizzy water or they give you refrigerated water with an digital interaction. You can find, for example, the vending machine that is closer to you. You can also measure your hydration or measure the amount of trees that you're saving by using a refillable water bottle. Now, we are very active in terms of 5.0 smart home, smart city, green building, because even with many municipalities, we are collaborating for extending our machines, and we also are carrying out interesting projects and partnerships with Lega Ambiente for condominiums. So we are trying to put some water dispensers in condominiums or even domestic ones in your own kitchen. Other than the whole professional catering sector and restaurant sector where we are leaders, market leaders. And we really accompany the professional use of dispensing system. So obviously, this is an economy topic, it is an environmental and social topic, but it is also an enterprise topic. Now we're going to get to that because you are actually introducing what is the second topic I would like to talk about also with you, which is consumption and education to sustainable consumption. Because just like you said, without this, we are missing the last mile, as we would say in other world, in terms of sustainability and circularity of sustainability. Now, I would like to ask Andrea Illy, because the foundation of which you are president, first of all, we would like to know why this name, but what I am curious about is to understand, this was born in October 2020, which wasn't a very easy time. So I would like to understand why you created this, what do you mean by regenerative, and why did you decide in the full beginning of the second wave of the pandemic emergency to create a foundation?
Mr. Illy, you're mute. Well, typical mistake. Thank you. Good morning, and thank you for the invitation. Thanks to Letizia Moratti, San Patrignano, and Confindustria. The Regenerative Society Foundation that you referred to was set up in October 2020. In full celebration of Parma as the Italian capital of culture, upon the initiative of two enlightened entrepreneurs, Maria Paola Chiesi and Davide Bollati, that was the origin of the idea to live behind in Parma. We wanted to leave behind a better future. It was a dream, a sentimental idea in line with our country So we focus on sustainability as a key topic. Let me explain the strategy. The issue of sustainability, especially in the last 1.5 century, which has been defined as Anthropocene, well, over that period of time, we've continued to use an extractive model. We continue extracting resources from the natural capital, as it's called. Natural capital is what is above and below the earth crust, the land, the sea, and the underground. Continuing to extract resources from the natural capital led to a twofold damage. First of all, the natural capital, which is at the origin of life, we should not forget, it continued to be depleted, consumed, and destroyed. Secondly, the products resulting from the transformation of the natural capital is polluting waste, which continues to invade the planet. This happened at an exponentially increasing growth rate. Unfortunately, the Homo sapiens in the last 1.5 centuries has turned out to be similar to locusts, which are known to destroy their territories. The result is the so-called planetary boundaries. We've already exceeded 4 out of 9 of them. Another indicator is the so-called shoot day, which is placed at around the month of June. In the best case scenario, it would be 31st of December. The idea is to consume only what we produce. The good news is that the natural capital is divided into two, the biological and the mineral one. The mineral part can be regenerated is non-regenerable, whereas the biological can be regenerated, which is the molecular process that allows to keep life in good health, but also leads to life reconstruction. So it could be applied to biological systems from microorganisms to large world population with two goals: protecting the natural capital that is still pristine, undamaged, and restore most of what has been damaged. So protection can be done by adopting regenerative practices where they are not. We heard other speakers talk about agriculture. Traditional agriculture is non-regenerative. It tends to kill, and the connection is gone. Non-conventional agriculture is regenerative, and it's based on regeneration of the soil, leading to sustainability, leading to good health. The second aspect is restoration, which is based on trying to accelerate as much as possible what we call primary production. Primary production is what leads to the production of biomass with a twofold benefit. First of all, it's the only way to fixate the carbon that we issue in the air through greenhouse gases, and we've done so over the last 1.5 centuries. Chlorophyll photosynthesis is a natural process that allows to fix gas in a solid form, which is perfectly compatible with life. The second fundamental element of primary production is restoration of biodiversity, which is known to be at the origin of health and life itself. The food chain induced by biodiversity is part of it, and all defense mechanisms of biosystems are based on that, which leads to healthier systems. So better compatibility with the human system. Some people dared to infer that COVID-19 could be due to our anthropomorphic impact on the systems. I don't know if it's true or not. Pandemics have always been part of our life. The number one cause of deadly diseases are non-transmissible diseases, which kill 50 million people. Those are strictly related to the health of ecosystems. Now, the Regenerative Society Foundation has this as its goal. I mean, the idea of developing regenerative economy, because we cannot talk about projects unless they have an economic return for the environment and for the wealth and happiness of humankind. That's our goal. So we can say that the main action, which is currently already going on, is one of energy transition to go towards zero emission. The second action would be exactly this: increase primary production and adopt regenerative models. We do so with a sort of brokerage strategy. We want to bring demand and supply together, the demand for projects with the supply of knowledge. The scarce resource here is capital, of course. We designed a roadmap where we start with agriculture, land occupation, reforestation, then water, urban regeneration, through to regenerative industry, and that's our dream. Now, Mr. Chairman, I will ask you questions later on. You already referred to sustainability in regard to what the Illy group is doing, and you mentioned the fact that it's important to have economic sustainability or economic returns. They're also non-refundable investments, but if you want to leave a good heritage behind and if you want to guarantee long-term activity, sustainability, economic sustainability of initiatives is key. With Mr. Gallavotti, we hinted at the topic of aware consumers. So sustainable consumption is a result of awareness among consumers. I have the feeling that sometimes the distinction between interest of company, the push coming from the entrepreneurial world and the world of consumers, I mean, this connection is difficult because these arenas, this context do not speak to each other. 10, 15 years ago, there was also a strong marketing connotation behind all green projects. You know, it was sort of a facade that you wanted to give to companies. It was a marketing action. It was a sort of window dressing, and everybody talked about corporate social responsibility to tell people, you know, we are not just a company working for itself. We are open to the needs of the world. I hope this green approach has gone beyond marketing or CSR, corporate social responsibility. I hope that the world is transitioning towards a green, considering economic sustainability. But where do you see issues in terms of the awareness that consumers are required to develop? I mean, companies can make all possible efforts, but unless consumers have awareness of social responsibility, it goes nowhere. When people have to choose from the shelf, they would still use the old models. The risk is that the entire virtuous circularity mechanism gets stuck. It's a very interesting question. I think that we are really at a big moment in history where change is here. It's not the typical slogan. You should first consider consumers not as a single body. We need to segment and distinguish among consumers so we understand that there are age brackets today in which people have fully embraced sustainability and it has become part of their lifestyle. If you look at young people today, they do implement the topic of sustainability. They apply this concept to their consumption choices and their daily consumption, and it's at the top of their priority list. They're no longer interested in owning cars. They prefer to ride a bike. They really look at sustainability as a full concept. Companies are implementing major projects today. We're a bit behind in the value chain because we cooperate with large beverage industries. All of them have radical projects for changing their business models. They have packageless product units or own the bottle projects. It's like offering beverages beyond the single-use pack. These are major changes that result also from technology. Imagine you have machines with ingredients kept in like cartridges of a printer. A big company could upload recipes, launch a new logo from the headquarters, and launch a new product only through the internet. You go there with a bottle and you can take a totally new recipe. I can train with a smartwatch around my wrist, go to the vending machine. The machine may know what kind of supplements I need and give me a recipe of water that's specifically targeted to what I need at the moment while I'm training at the gym. I mean, these things are feasible and they really change consumption models radically. Of course, companies have got to do their share of the work in two terms. Of course, they need to support a culture for responsible consumption. As a group, besides the fact that we are proud supporters of this forum since 2019, and we will continue to support the forum. We supported also many projects in the beverage industry. One will be launched in Milan on the 13th of March. I mean, it was supported and it was sponsored by Ambrosetti, and it was about the economic and social impact of delivery of water through the mains and the impact that it has in the households of the Italians. We are sponsors of Community Value of Water for Italy, still sponsored by Ambrosetti, together with many companies in the water industry, the mission of which is to become a thinking core to develop strategies and scenarios and policies for the long supply chain of water, with the view to becoming an example of virtuous cycle. And then the culture, the entrepreneurial culture, doing entrepreneurial activities in a responsible manner. But this depends on individual entrepreneurial choices. It depends on the labor policies that you put in place. The fact that if we open a new European distribution center in Rimini, it must be a zero impact center, and we are doing that at the moment. But this also has a business fallout. Building a zero impact center means that you need to have a whole supply chain that's zero emission or zero impact. So the economy is globally aiming at this. I may be over-optimistic, but well, being over-optimistic today is really rare. It's important to remember one point. Of course, I'm always on Italy's side. It's good to create increasingly more sustainable companies, but I would like the supply chain that you referred to be occupied by Italian companies. I'm saying this because in the photovoltaic industry in the past, I'm not really against Chinese, but there was a number of initiatives involving large public funds. Those were useful to increase the production of energy from alternative sources, but they were not so useful for the Italian model of entrepreneurship because very often the players were outside of Italy and also outside of Europe. And I don't want to go into this topic. Anyway, I'll go back to the topic I'm interested in, that is consumers. I'd like to hear from the chairman of Illy. Do you have the feeling that there is a fallout effect also from the viewpoint of enterprises, economic consequences deriving from sustainability, because you give more added value to the product and the way the product was produced, hence the issue of sustainability or not? Or is it Is it still price that drives everything? Well, yes. The issue of the fallout effects of sustainability on companies are multiple in terms of value creation. The first one is represented by cash flows used at the cost of money. So we are talking about the evolution of revenues and costs. From this viewpoint, it's recognized that, especially for brand companies, that reputation leads to an increase in consumption and also more loyalty, more consumers embracing the values and the projects launched by the brand, and they become more loyal, which means larger cash flows. The second component is the cost of money. The so-called WACC formula, weighted average cost of capital, it includes a factor which is beta. The higher the beta, the higher the cost of money, and the lower the value that you generate. So this dualism that is being debated on newspapers in Italy, especially in the last few weeks, the so-called shareholder capitalism, the old-style capitalism, that according to Milton Friedman, the moral duty of a company is to generate profits. Now, the Miltonian theory is in juxtaposition with the stakeholder company model, which includes all stakeholders, consumers, customers, suppliers, communities, through to the shareholders. This is a model whereby the company's performance is distinct from the responsibilities of companies, according to Peter Drucker, the father of corporate management. This dualism doesn't exist for the reason I mentioned before. The goal of a company actually is not profit, which is just a snapshot of the performance of the past without considering responsibilities. The real target is value, which is future profits that could be amplified or altered by an insufficient professional profile for non-sustainable companies. Merging these two theoretically opposed elements is fundamental from the viewpoint of a company and also from the viewpoint of regenerative economy. We wrote a letter to Il Sole 24 Ore last week on this topic. We reference to what you said about consumers. Today, the invitation to be sustainable is not towards consumers only. The new generation of millennials, who are not so new, but also the next generation, the Z generation, are quite sensitive to justness. So they can hardly tolerate companies that are not sustainable because they are not part of the idea of fairness. Regulators are also imposing increasingly more stringent regulations. So unless they are sustainable, companies would be left out of the market. The last key player is finance. Today, sustainable finance is the one that performs best. There's a boom of ESG. You need to be ESG rated, otherwise you have issues in terms of maximizing your corporate value. And then there is competition. If the company understands that becoming sustainable is a critical success factor, it's more than a competitive advantage. I mean, you cannot go forward without it. The competition will realize that. You know, banks, financiers, regulators, competitors, everybody, considering all factors, they are obliged to take the sustainability path if they want to survive.